Hey y'all. So today I thought I would give you a walkthrough of a study I just completed of a John Singer Sargent painting. I chose The Lady with the Rose to do a study of, which is actually a full-bodied painting, but I decided to focus just on the head because I'm really interested in what Sargent is doing when he blocks in a portrait and the facial features and the shadows and the hair. Master studies are really important. Sargent himself did master studies while he was in Spain of Diego Velázquez, who happens to also be one of my favorite artists as well. Maybe one day I'll do a study on him. But for now, let's look at this and we'll do a quick walkthrough on what it is I did. So here's my reference. It's in Carter Ratcliffe's book on John Singer Sargent, and as you can see, it's a full-bodied portrait, but I want to focus on her face, so zooming in here so that you can see it. So I wanted to keep my palette relatively limited. So with that, I added cobalt blue and dioxazine violet, which I instantly decided not to use. Raw sienna, which was primarily used for the block-in. Then ivory black, rose madder is my cool red, and cadmium red is my regular warm red, and yellow ochre, and finally flake white. So I began with a ground that you see here that is a mixture of burnt sienna and raw umber. Then I'm blocking it in using the raw sienna. The method I'm using here is kind of an older classic method, and one that Sargent might have used and undoubtedly learned in his training with Carolus Duran, as well as what the Parisian schools were teaching at the time. But he more likely would use a ground like I have here, but use vine charcoal instead of what you see me doing, and then moving into color. But for me, I like getting my ground done this way just to kind of work out all the details, but going straight to paint here rather than beginning with a pencil. So now I'm beginning the color block in, and I'm starting with the shadows here, mostly the darker shadows, and then working my way kind of toward the midtones. I kind of began here a little cooler than I wanted to, but this video makes it look cooler than it really is, actually. But that's when I began to immediately decide not to use the dioxazine violet that I put on the palette. It was way too cool, so I got rid of it pretty much forthwith. But moving forward, I began to move in toward the midtones, away from the darker shadows. That was primarily a mix of the yellow ochre and cadmium red with some of the cobalt blue. And then in the darker shadows, adding just a touch of ivory black to add cooler shadows in just the darker places. And kind of continuing to work this for pretty good ways until we begin to start seeing the values come into play, and that's when I began to add the pink of the cheeks, and then the warmth of the skin tones begins to come in here as well. Then after getting most of that in, began to block in the eyes, just so I begin to kind of feel everything in context. So I'm going to let the video just run from here, but as it moves along, you'll see that as I get to the hair, things will begin to take a big shift as far as the palette of the entire painting is concerned, particularly when I get to the background, which adds a much cooler element to the background to match Sargent's painting, which incidentally brings a lot more warmth into the subject. But with all that, I hope you enjoyed the rest of the video. Thanks a bunch.